Welcome to the World Prayer Centre Zoom chat. And we're back again today with a special guest, Steve Bavington. And we're looking specifically today at how we can pray for Christians in business and the business sector. And we've really got it on our heart at the moment that this is an important area for us as Christians to really be praying into and supporting Christians and non-Christians across the business community. Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hi, Paul. Thanks very much for having me on this. Really appreciate it. And thank you to all of you that are watching. My name's Steve. I run a charity in the city called Chaplaincy Plus. We work with businesses in Birmingham and people in Birmingham. And so we have a network of around 700 or so, mostly Christians. And we run events to support and encourage them, as well as doing one-to-one sort of meetings with people to encourage and support them in their workplace, to encourage them with their mission at work, to see that work is a ministry from God and is valuable in the sight of the kingdom of heaven. And so, so that's what we do. We also try to link directly with businesses to help with their employee well-being, which is the kind of buzzword of the moment, really helping them to look after their staff better by providing a confidential one-to-one listening service or well-being listening service, which in Christian circles at one point you might have called it a chaplaincy, but in the business community we found in Birmingham that really offering a one-to-one listening service for people of all faiths and none, which is essentially that, but describing it as that, actually is being well received, and we're starting to get some traction with that, Paul. So exciting times for us, and that's what I do for a living. It's my day job. I'm also a trustee at World Prayer Centre, which I'm absolutely delighted about, and love serving the mission of God through prayer in our city, in our nation, and in the nations.
And we're blessed to have you as a trustee. Steve, what's been the feedback from the business community at this time?
It's a very mixed picture for a lot of people still. I mean, remember, we're only about 13 weeks into what is lockdown, and 6 months since we actually ever first heard of coronavirus. It's sometimes hard to believe, isn't it, how much things have changed. And so for some people, there's still plenty of work on. There's still opportunities to gain new work and gain new business. We work with a lot of the professional sector in town, engineers and lawyers and accountants, and different sectors that are based in the city centre. So many people are still busy, although they may be even busier than normal because some of their colleagues have been furloughed, maybe things working from home is just a lot more pressured. So generally speaking, people, I think, are feeling more stressed one way or another. There's quite a bit of anxiety around, where people are wondering about what the long-term future is for either their job role or even their whole firm. Another thing is that there is a real sense that this is bringing about a permanent change to work, not just something that is like, okay, we'll be working from home for the next 3 months, then we're going to go back in and everything will be exactly the same as before. It's this slow dawning of realization that actually this isn't just even a 6 month or a year change until lockdown is over and we can just interact normally again. Actually, what businesses are working out is that you can work differently to the traditional kind of, if your company grows, get a bigger office. And so people are having to get used to the idea that their management team are starting to talk about, how do we make this a permanent change that people can work from home more? And you can imagine lots of people are actually welcoming that plan and that idea, that they're actually saying, we need to, we get more time at home. So a lot of the lawyers that live kind of in and around the Birmingham area, as it were, so people commuting in from places like Worcester and Redditch and Bromsgrove and kind of Sutton Coldfield and stuff, actually not at all missing the hour and a half commute in and back again, and actually thinking to themselves, I hope this stays. And other people for whom actually working from home hasn't been so convenient, that isn't such an appealing idea, to be quite frank. So so quite a mixed view. This disruption is bringing change, and as you know, change is always difficult for people. Generally speaking, unless you're a complete extrovert, you generally don't welcome too much change all in one go. And this has been an awful lot for people to get their heads around. Yeah.
And I suppose when you look into that and people changing their work patterns and working from home and not having job security, that brings up a lot of ministry opportunities, but also ministry needs. Could you, without naming names, talk us through some of the examples of what you've had to deal with maybe in the last few weeks?
Definitely. We've one of the big ones is redundancy notices of possible redundancy. As we're coming out of the whole furloughing period as well, companies are starting to look at their balance sheets and going, I think we're going to have to make some changes to our staffing structure. So that's quite a big one for people, and really it's our heart to keep reminding people it's not them personally that are being made redundant, it's the role that's being made redundant, and reassuring people that God is in control. He is loving them and caring for them through this process. And so that's one of the things, is redundancy and fearful work, fearful loss of income, etc. Another thing is the anxiety, whether or not there's redundancy involved. I think that generally speaking, there's been a lot of people who are worried and who are, in some cases, thinking, I'm right to be worried. And looking again this morning at Philippians 4, where Paul says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, with prayer and petition, present your requests with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And so it's actually been encouraging people that God is in control, that we can, in these circumstances, rejoice. We can, in these circumstances, put aside anxiety and rather have a thankful heart before the Lord. And so anxiety and worry on one side, you've got real issues like redundancy on the other, and just fear for the work, fear for lack of work, fear for lack of kind of if your identity or somehow your meaning and purpose is tied up in work, which it is for all of us, let's face it, in some way or other, actually, and that starts to get shaken. That has quite a big impact on us. So having been there myself, I know how that feels. You're kind of like, well, how am I going to provide for the family? They're very practical, and none of this is wrong to be thinking like that. It's a natural response and reaction. But actually, sometimes as we dwell on that, we need to have somebody come alongside us to help us come out of that thinking. Yeah.
And I guess you probably have to have sort of two different styles of communication and strategy in your communication, in that maybe you have to have one style for Christians who are in business and another style for non-Christians who you're working with in this sector.
That's right. We've set up something called the Wellbeing Forum, the Birmingham Wellbeing Forum, for anyone in business in Birmingham who has a role within their workplace of wellbeing champion, mental health first aider. People get trained very quickly by their bosses in first aid, for example. You put your hand up and say, I'll go on a first aid course. Well, now they've produced mental health first aid courses, and similarly people are putting themselves forward for that. And so one of the things that we're doing in response to that is actually providing a forum for where these people can just come together, these people with responsibilities, caring responsibilities in their work, regardless of their faith or beliefs, just to discuss, have a bit of refresher training, to discuss how we can better support people. And one of the things that's coming out of that actually is this idea that how remote working is affecting people, and how this Zoom connection is good. Yeah. It's great. It certainly serves the need and covers the gap to some degree. Actually, it doesn't do everything, particularly for those that are caring for others, and actually the stress that can cause, the anxiety that can cause, the lack of physical sort of proximity with people, particularly those that are on their own or in not healthy work home environments, actually. And so actually that's another thing. So as you say, reaching out to those people who are struggling, We also offer this chaplaincy service to a couple of businesses in the city, and again, just reaching out to people individually there. And really, it's a case of having a listening ear, being compassionate and understanding, non-judgmental, and stopping and hearing and loving people from wherever they're at, So, yeah, and in the midst of all that as well, remembering, life is also difficult.
Yeah.
Life is also suffering, generally speaking, COVID-19, people still get cancer. That's totally unrelated to COVID. People are still dying, totally unrelated to coronavirus. So, it's a case of just trying to be there for people. Yeah.
I suppose, obviously, from your own past and experience, you can sort of have great empathy. I know you touched on it before, but I just wondered if you'd go a little bit deeper into your own story so people can understand why you've got empathy in this role that you've been given to spiritually advise and give support to these people.
That's a great question and a long story, but I guess I worked for 12 years in business myself, in sales. Actually, I was doing largely cold calling, and over that time I had 14 different jobs. Would you believe, in 12 years, from the age of 18 to 30. And sometimes I got promoted internally. I count that as a different job. A couple of times we moved to geographical location, my wife and I, so we changed work. I changed work then. But some of the times I was made redundant. A few times I was made redundant. A couple of times the business withdrew from the area that I was working in, and so I lost my job because of that. Once I lost my job because they thought there was incompetence in sales, which I'd been asking them for quite a bit of support and not getting any. So maybe I was incompetent, but God is good. And it was, funnily enough, that was the last job I had in sales, and God took me out of sales and brought me into a job working for the YMCA and doing fundraising and marketing. So actually I've seen the goodness of God in terms of both providing for our daily bread every single time we came to an issue, my wife and I and the family, but also in terms of providing something long-term that was more stable for me. And so I've been through redundancy or job loss a number of times and seen just over and over and over again the faithfulness of God meeting our needs, spiritually meeting my needs, emotionally meeting needs, coming. And sometimes the closest moments that I've had with Jesus have been during those hard times. And so after this last sales job that I lost, I just during a life group prayer meeting, somebody just prayed and said, God prayed for me and said, God wasn't taken by surprise by what happened to me. And at that moment, I felt God say to me, actually, Steve, I planned it.
Yeah.
And it was such a comfort. And actually, that's probably one of the clearest moments where I've heard the voice of the Good Shepherd. And it was so helpful to know that he had a plan for me.
Yeah.
And within 6 weeks, I had a new career, a new job at the YMCA, working for a Christian employer who cared about me and my family, as well as just what I did. So, the graciousness, the goodness of God, I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. I can testify to it. And yet I have been there through those hard times. You're providing for a family, you're trying to pay a mortgage, and, the rug's pulled from under your feet. So, yeah, so I can really feel for people when they come through situations like this. Yeah.